Good evening, I am Mr. S. You're joining me for this interesting, short, to the point video, double of the day video on function intervals. These type of questions show up on the SAT and the ACT quite frequently, even if it's not under this heading, but this type of question shows up in a variety of forms. When I'm talking about function intervals, I'm talking about the ability of the student to understand a graph and answer the question based on the function or the graph that's presented. The question here for this first one is, for what values is function less than 0 or f of x less than 0? What is it talking about here in terms of values and in terms of f of x? If I were to underline values, what are we talking about, and f of x, what are we referring to? When we're talking about values over here, you should be thinking about x coordinate values. When we're looking at f of x, if the very term f of x seems confusing to you or to us, substitute it for y. And now suddenly the question is, for what x values is y less than 0? You have to just basically read your graph. When you're looking at these values above this x-axis, the y values are always positive, because you know in terms of y, this right here is 0, 0, but in terms of y, this value is 0. And when you start going upwards, the values of y increase. When you start going down, the values of y decrease. So the only area where the values of y are less than 0 is in this portion right over here below the x-axis. So all you have to do is write an interval notation to answer this question. You know this right here is -1, -2, -3. So between -1 and -3, we have a certain bunch of x values where the y becomes negative. Because if you were to plug these x values in between this range into your function, whatever that equation would be, the output always be negative. It would be less than 0. You cannot say equal to -3, and you cannot say less than or equal to -1, because in those instances where you actually put a -3 or a -1, the y value over here will be actually 0. It won't be less than 0, but it will be equal to 0. Here it's talking about specifically less than 0, so you must use this notation. Not equal to in either instances. So you're looking at -3, -1, and that would be your answer for this question. Now the second question of this video on function intervals is a good representation of the type of question you might see on one of these tests. For what values in this function right here are the f of x values greater than or equal to 0? Again, you have to look here at your curve and think about values here in terms of x-axis values. You're talking about the x-axis values, and f of x here is referring to your y-axis values. So where is your y-axis values in this graph larger than 0? Again, you know, you look from here at the origin upwards, y values are always positive here and y values are always negative down there. You know, from -3 to +3, the y values are negative because the curve is in the negative quadrant in terms of y. Above these values, it's positive. But how would you write it? You're looking at all the values here from -infinity up to this point, and then from 3 up to this point, because here we have a key difference. Here we have equal to, greater than or equal to. So from -infinity coming all the way up to -3, because if you were to put -3 over here, you actually have a y value of 0 because it's -3, 0, and it's okay to be equal to 0. And here you have 3, 0. It's okay again to be equal to 0 because we're saying equal to, greater than or equal to 0. And then from 3 up to infinity, you have the remainder of the values where your function is positive, meaning greater than 0. So this right here would be your answer. Anything from -infinity up to and including -3, and then jumping up to 3, including 3, and going up to positive infinity. You could even notate your answer like this. You're looking at -3 this way, and then you're going in this direction. Then you're going from +3 right here, and then you're shooting out in this direction. And this would very well mirror that interval. And that would be it for this video, looking at two function interval interpretation questions, because you could see something like this, especially on those exams, and it would be important for you to know how to handle this. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.